Hey guys, this is Ash and you're watching WriterGAsh. So today I'm going to be talking about my latest read, which was the tandem read of Empire of Storms and Tower of Dawn. So if you don't know, I'm doing a reread of the entire Throne of Glass series and I'm almost at the end and I just finished tandem reading for the first time. I've tandem read Empire of Storms and Tower of Dawn. So this will be two separate videos, but I wanted to do this intro make this intro the same for both. This is the Empire Storms book from Nerdy Ink, and this is the beautiful edge I've done. It looks a lot more green on screen than it is. It's a more like bluish green that I painted it, and then I've got the sword of the Goldrin like I have on every other book. And then this is Tower of Dawn with Kale, who's the main character in this book, and the dark blue edges with the Goldrin. So Empire of Storms and Tower of Dawn take place at the same time. Empire of Storms follows our main gang, Aelin, Rowan, Dorian, in the main continent, whereas Tower of Dawn follows Kale and Nesrin in the southern continent. And Kale and Nesrin go to the southern continent because Kale was severely wounded by the King of Ardalan and he needs to be healed, and that is where the Torre Chesme is, where all the healers are. And we followed their journey in Tower of Dawn, and I'm leading lady in Empire of Storms. Anyway, so here on out, we will have some spoilers, so be aware. Okay, so let's talk Tower of Dawn. So like I mentioned, Tower of Dawn follows Kale and Nesrin in the southern continent. And we know Nesrin's father is from the southern continent, and she is accompanying Kale as they go there, and they are teaching each other. Kale is teaching her about court rules and stuff, and Nesrin is teaching him about the southern continent. And when they arrive in the southern continent in Antica, they meet the Kagan and his children, who are basically all his heirs until one of them gets selected. The concept of the southern continent is really interesting, the way their ruling families work. Any of the Kagan's children could potentially be the next Kagan. And there's no king or queen, there is Kagan. So, unless I'm pronouncing it completely wrong, but it's an empire and there are six. There's supposed to be, they expected to meet 6 heirs. But there were only 5 because only 3 weeks before the start of this book, the youngest child of the Kagan died. And everyone is still in mourning, and Kale makes his case, and it's not very well received. But they work on a principle that anyone who needs the Torre Chesme is welcome to the healing gifts of the Torre Chesme. They don't charge people. Anyone who needs to be healed is to be healed. And that is a really good world where that is a thing in. But yeah, so that is where we begin here. And when they get there, Kale and Nesrin learn there's a lot that has gone on in the northern continents that they didn't know was happening. Like, Rifthold has been destroyed, basically. Nesrin goes into a panic because her father and her sister are there. So she reaches out to her uncle and aunt in the city and finds out that they reached out, said they were okay, they were on the run. And it's just like a hard thing. Like, she's dealing with that, and she's dealing with Kale. In this book, Kale and Nesrin, I don't even know if they're together. Like, I am confused. Are they together or are they not? So Kale is basically in a relationship with Nesrin, but they don't ever acknowledge each other. He's very hesitant. Like, I get it. He's hesitant to be physical with her with his injury and everything. I get that. But he is just so easy to dismiss her. Like, when him and Irene start getting close, I've always referred to as Irene. As they got closer, he kind of just forgot Nesrin existed. He felt guilty every once in a while, but there was never any loyalty or I didn't feel like he respected Nesrin the way she deserves to be respected. And I'm just glad they didn't stay together, or they weren't the pair at the end. But like, were they ever actually even together? That's what I kept thinking. Like, this is not a real relationship. You don't talk to each other. You don't depend on each other. There is nothing there except for the title. That, like, Kill insisted that was a thing. Like, every time someone has broken his heart, he's gone back to Nesrin and used her. That has been their dynamic, and she knows it. And it's just sad that, like, when, like, what's his ex's name was left him, that's when him and Nesrin became a thing. And then Selena left, so him and Nesrin became a thing again. And it's like a vicious cycle where he kept going to her, and like, when he felt rejected. Anyway, despite that, I think like the fact that Nesrin, despite having feelings for Sarthak, did nothing with Sarthak until like they like definitively broken everything up. But Kale and Irene at that point had sex multiple times. Yes, Nesrin left a letter saying, I'm not holding you to anything, I'm not gonna hold myself to anything. But you've not had the conversation breaking it off yet. You wait before you act on anything with Irene. I thought that was like expected. Am I wrong there? Like, you should wait to break up with your current partner before you jump into bed with your next partner. That being said, I do like Irene's character. I love Irene. Like, we first meet her in Assassin and the Healer, and you see her finally make the journey to Torre Chesme, and she's trained as a healer. She kept her word to Selena. Basically, she keeps the note Selena gave her forever ago, and it's her motivation. And she's taught all of these girls how to protect themselves like Selena once taught her. Speaking of, when at the end of this book, Kale sees the letter and realizes, damn, that's Selena. It was so good to see his realization that Selena is the reason that his wife was able to get to where she needed to be. It was the reason his wife survived. She was the reason that he met Irene, and Irene was able to bring the army she was bringing to the war for Aelin. And it was all because Selena once helped a girl in need. Selena is a lot of things, but at the core of it all, she is just a good person. Like, she's done a lot of bad things. I'm not refuting that. But whenever someone needed help, she's been there. And speaking of Aelin, Hussar, when she reveals that she received a letter from Aelin, and God, of course she did. Like, Aelin, despite being a continent away, is just 10 steps ahead of everyone. She is just this brilliant mastermind who like gets all of these little pieces ready. And because of Aelin and because of Irene, because of these two amazing women, an entire army is heading to Terrasen to aid Terrasen against Morath. Okay, and then let's talk about the healing journey that Cole goes through. One of my favorite things about this journey is that a lot of it does focus on him physically healing, but there is such a emphasis on his mental health journey as well. Like, Irene keeps trying to get him to talk, because with that block, him not allowing himself to feel and get better emotionally, mentally, he's not gonna get better physically if he's not gonna get better emotionally. I love this about Sarah's books. She makes mental health such a priority. For me personally, reading Sarah J. Maas's books has always been personally therapeutic, and they really address trauma, especially. Trauma is Sarah J. Maas's genre, maybe? I don't know what the word for it. She writes trauma so interestingly. Every character has their own different type of trauma, and they deal with it in their own way, and that makes it really important, because everyone deals with their trauma differently, and Sarah J. Maas's characters really embody that. And I just really like seeing Kale heal in different levels. And I love seeing like them working on getting him better. I also love that Kale started to help Irene training these girls in self-defense. Those scenes were definitely good. Now let's talk about Nesrin. I really like Nesrin's character, and I really enjoyed her and Sartak's conversations, their scenes. I loved her being amongst the Rukin. When she was with them, she learned so much. She got so much information that changes the course of this war. She found out Maeve. I remember when I first read that, I'm like, what the fuck? But like, Maeve is a flag. Maeve is a flag. Like, what the fuck? And Nesrin is armed with this information, bringing it back to Aelin and gang. I also like that Sartak has a really good code of moral, and he's a good prince. I usually love saying, like, I went into this book wanting Hussar to be the next Kagan, but I'm glad Sartak's the heir, because I think between all of the siblings, he's the best choice for the heir of the Kaganet or Kaganet. Oh, anyway. With that being said, let's move on to the actual characters we meet in this book, the Kagan's children. As I mentioned before, like there is no like succession order. Like the Kagan can choose one. They're in the past, people have tried to kill each other and all of that. And often like the person who is then elected Kagan will kill their siblings and their children, so they wouldn't have any competition other than their direct line. And that is absolutely and utterly sad. And so talks like, one day hopefully someone will love their siblings more than they fear they love the tradition. And I think Sartak's gonna be that person. That scene at the end when Duva survives, Irene helps Duva survives, and Hussar goes, all of everyone else but never Duva. And then Kill later goes like, all of them. Like in that moment, like it felt more like Sartak is gonna be the kind of person that was like never them. And I think Sartak could potentially change the tradition. And yes, you could still pick the most worthy leader, but you don't have to eliminate your entire family to do so. I mean, just think of it. Maybe one of your nephews or nieces would be a better pick for Kagan one day. And why would you do that? Like, why would you take their life away when there would be a better ruler for your world? It's still your family. But no, I really did enjoy being in the southern continent in this book and exploring this whole new part of Aurelia. I love Aurelia, and the more I think about it, I always thought if I could live in any of Sarah J. Maas's worlds, I would pick the Night Court. I think Aurelia. I'm not sure where in Aurelia quite yet, but Aurelia would be where I would choose. I would say Antica, but like it's too damn hot, and Terrasen is too damn cold. Maybe Doranel, not under Maeve, because like that sounds like a really good middle with magic, and I still get to be in Aurelia. I just love how like diverse Aurelia is. It feels like a real world rather than like a fake world, because like each continent has its own culture, its own people, and it's just like, I love that. It feels real, it feels authentic, and it's a beautiful world. The fact that Sarah J. Maas wrote this book, planned this series as like her first, I think she was a teenager in college when she started writing this, and that makes it all the more impressive. Anyway, so that is my book talk on Tower of Dawn. I hope you enjoyed it, and I hope you read it. I definitely enjoyed tandem reading this book. I feel like, yes, I still like enjoyed Empire of Storms more, but reading this, not having to wait for Kingdom of Ash after reading Empire of Storms, waiting another year, it made this book a lot more enjoyable. And I still got to read Empire of Storms. I will say, like, every time I had to switch to this book, a part of me was like, why? But there's Empire of Storms. But I did it, and I managed to stick to the tandem read more or less correctly, because I didn't have it tabbed like they suggested. I just like did it every time I remember, like, you know, I remembered how many chapters I would read, and then I would switch that way. I then put in like a bookmark on the end edge as well, so I could, you know that you need to move now. But it worked, and I enjoyed it. I don't think I'll be tandem reading too many books, if I'm being honest, but I did enjoy this one. And if I ever reread this book again, I will definitely be tandem reading them again. Or maybe next time I'll read Tower of Dawn first and then Empire Storm, so I can see if I like it. But towards the end, like here in the end where they start mentioning what happens in Aurelia, it's a spoiler for what happened in Empire Storm. So like, if you read this, you're gonna get spoiled for Empire Storm if it's your first time. If you've read Empire Storms before, it's not a big deal. But if you're doing a reread, you could do it any way you want. But I am rambling. It was a great book, a great series, and that's all I've got to say.